And this is Danny with the Crypto Show, and we're here to talk about Dash, which is a what is it, 10, 11, 12 years? How long is
11 and a half years.
11 and a half years Dash has been around? So Dash started out as Darkcoin, and I don't know how long it was after that Evan Duffield had decided to add evolution, but it was a great idea, and it took a long time coming, but it's here. So tell me about evolution.
Yeah, so Evan Duffield came up with this idea for evolution to basically give usability features at the protocol level. So you could have usernames, contact lists, things like that to just make it easy, like a payment app. He first talked about it, I think it was October of 2015 at Bitcoin Wednesday in Amsterdam. And since then, it was long promised. Some teams tried to take a crack at it, didn't deliver it. They're gone. Finally got launched, and the mainnet launched last summer. And so evolution, it maybe a little bit, it grew from just a couple basic features to an entirely separate blockchain, enshrined sidechain, as it were, that works for all kinds of data uses. So, for example, writing encrypted memos for your transactions on the chain, decentralized data storage that can be queried without having an index or a node or anything like that. Just basically like a full service data network, and hopefully smart contracts relatively soon. And so basically Dash is kind of becoming one of the more modern cryptocurrency chains that can do all that good stuff, but with a payment chain separate from the data chain. So that's kind of like in the nutshell what it is.
That's interesting that you bring that up. How long did it take for Dash to decide to have a side chain? It's on Cosmos, I believe.
It's similar structure to Cosmos. If you get really into the details, instead of practical Byzantine fault tolerance for the consensus, it uses something new called scalable Byzantine fault tolerance that uses the master quorum system of like basically switching through quorums of nodes to run the chain. Over time it was basically there's a lot of things that an account-based model with super fast block times, like 1 to 3 second block times, can do that like the old UTXO model doesn't really do nearly as well. And so at some point it was just decided that we should probably run this on a separate chain and kind of keep the two technologies, working together, but sort of a little bit separate, like something different.
Awesome. Well, I mean, the reason why I asked how long it took for Dash to decide to go ahead to the sidechain, because if you look at Paul Stork, who's been trying to pass BIP 300 and BIP 301 in Bitcoin, I think he's been working on that for like a decade, and he can get nowhere with it. So how long did it take for Dash to move? I mean, it's a testament to Dash's governance model.
Yeah, I don't think there were very many explicit governance votes on this. It was like the evolution idea was kind of pushed out. The whole community liked it. Everyone's been sort of working on it. There were a few governance votes about, for example, one is like the structure of the evolution master nodes, like how big should they be, or how many do you want, kind of thing. There was a proposal about that. There was also a proposal about when to actually release, because if you want everything ready to go, I would say like right around now would have been a better way to get a cleaner release if you just had all the features ready. But the community wanted an accelerated release, just like as soon as you can get something on mainnet, get it there, and we'll just iterate. And so there was a few governance votes about that. But basically, it's similar to I guess the drive chain idea that Paul Storch is talking about, but it's not nearly like tacked on. And so, for example, you could bridge credits, Dash from the two chains in like a second. It just goes right back and forth. The same validators run both chains, and although the miners only run the I guess legacy UTXO chain, and then the masternodes they're the only people that run the evolution chain.
In early Dash days, the motto was instant, private, and secure. And on the private side, it just used a coin mixer. And so now Dash is adding some new ideas with confidential transactions. Can you explain what the improvements are of confidential transactions over this coin join and also like legal implementations. Like, would you get in trouble for being the mixer?
Yeah, so the way, on the protocol level, Dash is similar to like Bitcoin or any of those other coins where it's a transparent blockchain. You get a new address every time, hopefully. And the CoinJoin implementation is if you want to, you can mix funds among a whole bunch of different parties automatically by the system. And so then when you send, it's harder to tell where that came from. It's like if I have 10 Dash and then I mix and then I spend 3 Dash somewhere else, the link from my 10 Dash to that is kind of broken. But so it's just a transaction graph break. Obviously, all transactions are public, all amounts are public, everything, but usually you can throw everyone off your trail by just doing that. And that was the original approach from 2014, kind of Dash's flagship feature during the Darkcoin days. And, still been constantly improved over the years, but still like the basic, kind of like polished the same basic thing. So confidential transactions just uses cryptography to hide the amounts of and balances of transactions. So if I sent you money from a regular address to regular address, everyone sees sent from A to B this amount. And with CT, everyone sees A to B, who knows the amount and who knows how much you have. Or for example, you post like a donation address. Old way, everyone can see all the donations, how much they were for, all the money you have. New way, everyone can see you got a bunch of donations. How much do you have? You don't know. So there's two big things that this does, right? First, for all the people that all the users who don't have an interactive wallet, like an alt wallet that is doing the mixing in the background, has this extra feature, you could just have a CT address, which we'd hope to be kind of the default style over time. And then you just get a lot more basic privacy, even if you don't care. So for the non-privacy nerds, they still get to hide their basic amounts and things from like the barista. They, maybe they got like 10 grand in their wallet. They send some money to the barista, and then the barista doesn't know how much they have, and that's it.
Yeah.
And so but then also when you combine it with the CoinJoin, it makes it so much more efficient and also private because you aren't leaking the amount data. So for example, right now, if like 10 Dash, I want to, mix it. I start the CoinJoin option. It breaks it up into like a bunch of, a few 1 Dash denominations, a few 0.1, a few 0.001, etc. So you like breaks it up in like 60 or 100 chunks or whatever like that. Each one of those gets mixed, a minimum 4 times, if not 16 or more, right? And so that's a lot of mixing transactions. It does take a certain amount of time to get that done, and might bloat the blockchain in certain ways. Whereas if a lot of that stuff is done because you can still see amounts on the blockchain. But if you don't need to see amounts on the blockchain, now you don't need to break it up. Your 10 Dash can just be mixed with someone else's 10 Dash, and no one can see the amounts because they're hidden. And you only need to do it like 1 to 4 times. Like even if you just do one mix and then you send it, that's already a really good privacy improvement. So I guess to recap, the CT hiding amounts is great for people who will never do advanced privacy features for whatever reason, or like the wallets won't implement or whatever. But also it adds a lot of privacy for people who have no privacy right now. And then if you actually want privacy, it makes the function so much more, not only better, but more efficient.
The CT will be optional, or?
Yeah, so there will be both address types, right? You could have the old school, like exchanges, I'm sure will want to use those. Institutions who want to like, if there's a Dashy sailor who wants to like come and post their proof of reserves. But as far as I believe the plan is, but even if not, I'm going to push for this, is for all the basic Dash wallets to default to CT addresses. So like you have to like do a special, you have to have a special transparent thing for like, this is your public accounting thing if you want to do that. But the push should be default. And I know that, for example, some of our good wallet partners like the Edge wallet would, they're big on privacy by default. And so if this is an address type on the Dash network.
SegWit address, regular address.
And like Zcash is shielded by default. Obviously, Monero's private by default. All that in Edge, and I would like to have Dash CT by default in Edge and other wallets like that. So hopefully over a long period of time, this becomes the regular way everyone uses Dash.
So with the mixer, and mentioned legal things. If you and I are mixing, you and I and 10 other people are mixing our stuff together, is that not an argument for money laundering? That's a slippery slope there. But I'll mention the other feature after you.
Yeah, it's privacy and regulation slash like what banks and things think about it is been a very complicated and confusing subject for a long time. I don't think anyone has there. I don't think there's one like uniform playbook for this kind of thing. But it seems like over the years there have been anyone who has a business, a third-party business that connects people and offers some special privacy, such as, for example, the Samurai Wallet people, is kind of the biggest sort of example of getting in trouble for that stuff.
Right.
That could be viewed as like money laundering, especially, and in their case, and I've had them on my show. I support their right to do what they want. I don't think they're criminals or should be in prison at
Right.
all. That being said, the case that came against them probably had a lot to do with they built a service, they ran it themselves. It wasn't just out on the network. They built a service, they ran it, they made money from it, they raised venture capital for it, and they knew that certain sanctioned entities used it, and also they advertised to sanctioned entities to use it. And so with the mixing thing, there's a ton of gray area, and I think they pushed themselves on the darker shade of the gray area, and it didn't work out. But there are a lot of protocol built-in coin join implementations. Like obviously, Dash has been there for 11 years doing this feature. No problems have ever arisen from there. Like I've been testing out a Coinbase card lately. I topped that up with mixed funds. No one cares. It's pretty well established. There are a few different coin join implementations out there. Like Bitcoin Cash has this Cash Fusion, which is a peer-to-peer type protocol, similar to Dash's thing, just not built into the protocol, but still not like a company's doing this. No one's had problems with that. Decred has a built-in coin join. There's a lot of these kinds of things. One could argue, so we're here at the Litecoin Summit, Litecoin's MWeb is a combination of confidential transactions plus every transaction is kind of like a mini coin join on the network. And so,
Wimble?
yes, and so that's just kind of how it works. All the amounts are hidden, but like everyone's things are kind of on the point of transaction, like a quick little shuffle around. So that stuff has not come under any legal issues. I really don't think it could be a legal problem, but again, you always want to be one step ahead, and it does seem like for example, CT seems to be super. Well, let me just take a breath of here and let you talk before I go into another paragraph.
Well, I think where I was going with that is the dev who is implementing the CT for Dash also has another feature. He's the lead dev for Hush, which is a ZK Snarks. It's a fork of Zcash, and he has a feature called Sietch, which actually just puts out eight outputs instead of one or two outputs. So it gives you a lot better obfuscation that way. And you're not mixing with other people. So, and to top that off, it's not as slow as what you're talking about, the instant private send. It takes so long to do, and Sietch could be instant and add an extra level of privacy. Of course, I know that's not in your proposal yet, but maybe Dash will look at that in the future because it seems to be a very easy implementation.
Yeah, the cool thing about Sietch is, from my understanding, it's a wallet level thing. It's not like you don't have to change the protocol. You just have a wallet say, hey, instead of sending 1, you send 8. And so, like, real quick to break down kind of how that works, if I send you some money, it's just like, I have like 10 Dash, I want to send you 3. I send 10 Dash, and you get 3, and then I get 7 back as a change address. It's like a 2 output. That's like a very standard transaction. Right. So if you're looking on the blockchain, you see that, you're like, oh, that's what happened. Someone paid someone and got change. That's how these UTXO coins work. Now, even with ZK ones where you can't see any amounts or anywhere it went, it just says shielded, you just see a 2 output transaction, and you can kind of assume that that's it's a single one. And then if there's like an 8 or 9 output transaction, It just, you can see, even though you can't see where it came from, how much it's for, you could say, oh, someone's paying a bunch of people here.
Yeah.
And if it's like every, the first of the month, you see this thing, oh, this seems like a salary transaction. Who's paying in Zcash? Who says they pay their employees in Zcash? Even though there's no other data, that one piece of data is a crumb that then could turn into other things. This is, of course, super high level stuff. Like the average, you take like an intelligence agency to start tracking this kind of stuff. So what Sietch does is just, for ZK coins, is it just adds extra dummy input. So you send to, you get to whoever you're paying, to yourself, and then you send 0 funds to like several other people. So 0 amount transactions.
Well, the dev's thinking was, I'm going to stack Monero on top of Zcash and see how that works. That's kind of where he got the idea from that.
Yeah, it does. When you look at it on, like, say, the Zcash blockchain, if this was implemented in Zcash or Hush, right? It would just be multi-payment transactions, and single transactions would kind of look the same. And so that kills that one thing. Now, if you do this on a transparent chain, it doesn't make any sense, because it's like, okay, this guy paid this guy and he got this change back, and then he just sent a bunch of no coins to nowhere. It's like, okay, what are you doing? But if you're using CT, you can't see amounts, so then every transaction could go to a bunch of people, and you wouldn't know until the next person starts to move the funds somewhere else, and you're like, okay, that might have been one, but it also could have been one of 8. It could have been a multi-party one. So even though we know that this was one of the recipients, it couldn't maybe not be the only one, and it adds that extra bit of privacy. And so if you add Sietch to CT by default on some wallets, first of all, you just get that instant privacy, a pretty good level of instant privacy. But
you would actually have a higher, I guess, anonymity set at that point than Monero, because I think Monero right now is hiding in a group of 1.4.
Yeah, well, there's a ton of nuance there. It's a group of like 16. If you do a lot of statistical analysis, you probabilistically get that down to 4.2, I think. And if you flood the network with spam transactions, you get that lower. It's a lot of steps, but I'd have to I'm not an expert, so I'm not going to comment on exactly how that compares, but it is a similar idea. Now, the interesting thing is, my sort of, for lack of a better term, like, Dash privacy dream in the short term here, at least, or the near term, would be to have CT mixed plus Sietch. So then you have, you get paid your salary, it goes into your address. No one knows how much you have. That all gets mixed with a few people over the course of a few seconds, so you don't, the trail kind of goes cold. But even if somehow someone was able to like harm that privacy, then when you make a payment, that is like one of 8, and you don't know which one that is. And so it's like it's kind of like if one were to think of it in like Monero terms, for example, because like a lot of privacy people, that's their most familiar project, right? It's sort of like instead of like Monero does like a decoy set when at the point of sending, would be an equivalent, I would say, of like doing that ahead of time a little bit, and then after as well. So like double. So for the super privacy nerds, right? So that's something that I think could be really cool. Hopefully not controversial at all to even implement, because you just say, hey, Edge Wallet's going to do this, and then bam, there you go.
Right. I guess in the evolution of Dash, no pun intended, the first few years, the privacy feature was very embraced, and and it was a selling point that Dash had privacy. As it progressed, and with Ryan Taylor, we ended up at Money 2020, and then hey, it's suddenly not popular anymore because these corporate companies that we want to bring in to accept Dash probably don't like this privacy idea. So he or that group of, Dash Core at the time kind of hid it. It never actually went away, but they hid it. They erased the word private from the vernacular, and so it was not popular anymore. How popular is privacy now with the Dash community? How did they receive your idea of privacy?
Yeah, so, and I have to say, like, I ultimately disagreed with the path that administration, as it were,
Me too.
that went. But at the same time, I have to understand it's because I have I have to do a lot of the same things these days, and it's a no right answers situation where even if I think they did the more wrong approach, it's still like it's a rapidly evolving technology. You build the best for your users, and then because someone says, "Oh, that's like a laundromat. That's terrible. You're banned in this country." Like, that's not what it is. It's not a laundering tool, you know. And then the word private has actually just the P word is what got Dash 2 listed in a lot of places over the years. Not the technology at all, just the fact that there's that P word. And so they're like, oh, well, let's just debrand it to CoinJoin. And then, but it was too late by that point. Funny enough, these days, it's still kind of a thing where the general concept of privacy is being sort of split into anonymity and confidentiality. And anonymity is what is being sort of, and I've talked to some lawyers and stuff about this. That's sort of like not guaranteed by law. That's sort of, maybe criminals or whatever else use. Confidentiality is just basic people keeping their basic finances private. And so it's interesting enough that in a legal opinion letter for Dash, the phrase confidential transactions appears in those two words together to describe Dash's current feature, before CT, even though it ends up being, it's kind of interesting how that goes. The actual technology of CT is also being implemented in PayPal's USD stablecoin, in USDC, and a lot of these super regulated, one might call them proto CBDCs, whatever. So it's, even though this is a big overhaul for Dash's privacy, it's also like, I would say, a safe first baby step, or not a baby step, but
We should call it scam shielding. I don't know.
yeah, you call it lose all your money, lose all your money, send.
Yeah.
No, but so it's, I think that, so to answer about the Dash community, I think they always cared about privacy. There's a few that don't, for sure, that are around there. I think a lot of people sort of implicitly trusted a lot of the kind of leadership to say, well, if you...
We know those guys. They were the ones that walked out of the conference yesterday after Michael Saylor. Right.
Yeah, basically, those kinds of people. But basically, you see a lot of people were like, well, we like our privacy, we'd like to keep talking about it, but if you say we should rename it or whatever, and that'll help us, we'll kind of go along with that. And I think that, so first of all, the current lead developer of Dash, Quantum Explorer, fantastic guy, refused to let the username system get registered in Dash without CoinJoin being built into the mobile wallets. He said, look, we need this because I don't want people registering usernames that are tied to their funds. I want people to be private. And the current username setup is really private in that, first of all, it acts like a stealth address. So if I send you, there's no sharing of an address. So here's my payment address. It's just...
well, CT would be a much faster, better option for that.
It gets added in that too. Yeah. But so it already adds that. And everything, when you share an encrypted extended public key, then all payments you can just generate a single derivation path per user, where now you just get payments right there. No one else knows about them unless they're doing hardcore blockchain analytics. So the fact that from almost all of Dash's existence, due to mostly technical limitations, I would say, just the main core full node wallet had the privacy feature even. And now all the wallets do. And so I think that the community really embraced it. I know that we had a governance proposal for the CT edition, and both of the lead developers of the core team as well as the platform, like the Evolution side team, they both expressed their support for this. It was actually the lead core developer's Pasta, his sort of idea to add CT to be able to make the mixing better and more private. It was kind of his idea, and I just took it and ran with it. And so I think the whole community is united on this idea that a decent amount of privacy is something that we do need to keep, and more importantly, we need to keep privacy very usable. So
like the attention span. Like, who's going to want to mix for 10 hours?
Yeah, and the wallet has a really good user experience around that, as best as can be, in that it works in the background. So you just you receive something, you go about your day, and an hour later when you need to pay, it's all ready. But it is, it does drain the battery. It is a lot of transactions. If I send you 10 Dash and you want to immediately send it away somewhere else in the next 2 minutes, you might have to not do it as so privately right now. So those kinds of things are things we're fixing. So that hopefully at someday someone can just use Dash, just friend someone on the blockchain, send them some payments, send it to the coffee, everything, not even think about anything. Everything just works instantly. Everything's super private. Everything just, it just works. That just works thing is something we've always had. And in my opinion, the private part of things was one of those, well, it mostly just works. And we're trying to like close that loophole and make it just, uniform. We're not trying to scam people here and say it works when it 90% works, when 100% works.
Awesome. I think we covered everything pretty good. We actually did record one yesterday, and I had an audio snafu with that. But that audio, that the developer, we have the developer on as well, and he explains it a little bit deeper, and I'll add that to this interview. So this is, of course, Joel Valenzuela with Dash, the Desert Links at just about all of his social medias. And I'm Danny with the Crypto Show. And you can check out our Telegram at DragonX Chain. Come over there and check out. It's a fork of Hush. And peace to all the Dash folks. Miss y'all. And I'm glad that it's still going.
Yeah.
Cool.
Same.
All right.
You guys are adding confidential transactions into Dash, and some of the features that you just kind of described makes me think that Dash may actually become a competitor to Xano, because in the privacy world, Xano is kind of all the rage right now because they have this, usernames, confidential transactions. You can create your own asset and all that. I mean, and they're built on CT as well.
Yeah.
It's a Monero based blockchain, and so that'll be pretty good. So we have a developer on the line. Duke is the lead developer at Hush, and I work with Hush and DragonX, and we actually receive our code from Hush. And Duke gave me this really cool anecdote about Dash or Hush, excuse me. When Hush first started, the name for Hush was going to be Zdash, which is kind of, a little, it's pretty cool.
Yeah.
And now,
Those were different days. That was 2016. So yeah, people were trying their best.
yeah,
A long time ago.
right. So, Duke, can you explain what it is that you're adding to Dash, how that interfacing with Dash?
Sure. I'm assuming you want me to start pretty high level. But basically, it's a new type of address and a new type of transaction, and it hides the amount being transacted. That's really the whole point of confidential transactions.
Mm-hmm.
So it is not quite the same as Monero or Zcash, where more things are hidden, but it is a big step up in privacy from everything being public.
So is this compatible with their private send as well? How does that? So you can actually mix. Plus, you'll have CT.
So it's kind of an alternate option, I guess I would say. It's So I don't think private send is going away, but that's for the Dash people to decide. This is a different option, and you could use both. So you could use private send before a confidential transaction, or after, or even both. So I would say they're complementary. They could be used.
Let me give the background on that. So, where this whole journey started was obviously, I'm always looking for ways of improving, and the head of the core side of Dash stuff, he said, well, we could do a lot to improve what we got by adding confidential transactions, and kind of it's morphed into, there's a lot you could do with this first piece, but the thought process is the coin join functionality, called private send, is, it does what it does, but it can be slow because you have to break every transaction up into a bunch of different denominations, which could be like 60, 100 inputs or whatever, depending on your balance. And then you have to mix each of those blinds several times, like, 4, 6, up to 16 or more times. And that's a ton of effort, a ton of time. It takes a while. So even though the transactions are instant, there's a lot of like background time to get this going. And if you do mix a confidential transaction to balance, confidential balance where amounts are hidden, then you don't need to break up any denominations. You mix the whole thing. And because you're not taking that amount data point, you can just mix a few times. So it would be just like a few seconds. So I would say it would be sort of like a similar effect where I guess like Monero is today, but kind of same but different, right? So a similar approach where amounts are hidden, and then you have a transaction graph obfuscation technique, but it's done ahead of time of the transaction, and it's not through decoys, fake transactions. It's real transactions, but joined amongst other participants. So that's kind of where the long-term vision went from this, but just having a CT address type for people who don't want to do an interactive single process, or people like, wallets that just want to implement something simple, even though everything's still transparent as far as who's sending to what, just having the amounts is a big improvement for those people as well.
So there's a feature that is in Hush and DragonX called Sietch, taken from the movies Dune.
Yes.
And it basically
The
adds-
book, dude, you mean, right?
Yeah.
I was gonna say something. I guess you beat me to it.
Right. Anyway.
All right, and just get Joel a little bit closer to the microphone, because I hope that the audio is being recorded better than I can hear, but we'll see.
Yeah, we have our own little clip-on microphones.
Okay, way better. Whatever. Yeah, I can. Yeah. So, yeah, there's a thing called Sietch. It is a secure underground fortress in the Dune universe. Yeah, that's maybe going to be an optional add-on. It's something that reduces metadata leakage about the transaction, and I think it can be added to Dash. It's something that is not nearly as big of a change as adding confidential transactions. It's not a consensus change, and it can kind of be done relatively easily once confidential transactions are working.
Okay. Can you explain? It's 8 outputs. Explain how Sietch works.
All right. The purpose of Sietch is to hide how many people are receiving the transaction. So, for instance, in Zcash protocol world where Hush and DragonX live, you can see how many recipients of a transaction there are. That's not hidden in the zero knowledge goodness. You can see, for instance, if you send a transaction to 5 people, instead of the much more common one person at a time, it's very noticeable in the blockchain. It stands out. You can say, oh, look, this transaction has this many recipients. So what Sietch does is basically trades a little bit of block space for privacy. So it says, I'm going to add a few outputs to just magical unknown entities that are not actually real people, but they are real addresses and they do receive data. And so it prevents someone that's looking at public blockchain data from saying, oh, this transaction is standing out to me because it looks like it's sending to maybe 3 recipients, which is already becoming rare. Most transactions are sent to one person and usually have one change output. So in total, there's usually 2 outputs for the huge majority of transactions. So once you start to see 3 or more outputs in a transaction, it makes a transaction really stand out. And the more there are, the more it stands out. So with Hush, we pad out the number of recipients to about 7 or 8 kind of, and there's some randomness in there. So there's a lot of randomness in the hush protocol to make things just non-deterministic and hard to predict. So the actual number that you had it with could be chosen differently for Dash. So for instance, Dash could decide that maybe it's just 3 or 4, recipients instead of 7 or 8. So that is configurable and could be different. And that might be based on their decision of, how much block space to trade for how much privacy.
So where are you guys at with the implementation? You've already got the proposal approved. Where are we at? And
Yeah.
how is this going to happen?
So we got the Dash improvement proposal in depth. I would say mostly finished, although obviously in this case it's a living tip, so it will be updated as the actual implementation goes forward. So we got that as an initial kind of scope of everything. Then we got a governance proposal because Dash as a DAO, uh, it's not like I'm King Dash. They can just say, and I bequeath upon the CT, and then it happens. So had to play the politics, and that for me was the part I was the most nervous about because the Dash community is one of the first cryptos to ever have any kind of privacy enhancing functions in 2014. Uh, has been through the delisting wars with alongside like Monero or some of these other projects, and some of the Dash community who was a little skittish of like, well, we'd like extra privacy, but like, is this going to hurt us long run? Is this going to be the death blow? Whatever. There's a lot of that kind of sentiment, and especially previous people involved in the Dash ecosystem, such as Ryan Taylor, former head of the core team, who's no longer with the project now, kind of de-emphasize the privacy element and try to get things, try to like get lighter treatment from the regulators or whatever. And there's still, I guess, some lingering sentiment. So I had to make sure, that the DAO vote passed by a good margin. So the community's pretty united around advancing privacy. There's still some people are scared, of course, but now it's DAO official. It's the path forward. And then the third step, I guess, right now is we're drawing up an implementation scope, basically, what is it going to take to do, et cetera, et cetera. And then we have a nonprofit, Power of Privacy, which generously agreed to fund its integration. They've done some good work with Vero, for example, past that's kind of right, really do about them. And so we're going to present that to them, see if it looks good, and then get the funding, get moving on. And then development starts, and then we're off to the races, and I couldn't be happier.
Are these default features or options?
Yeah, so they're optional, as in there's a new address type. But as far as I understand, and if it's just in case I'll shake the cages until I get my way, sort of thing.
Right.
But the wallets, like the mobile wallets, whatever official type products, will default to this. They'll be like a CT address. CT is the way people tend to send it. And then if you want to have a transparent thing, when auditable, whatever, you can do that too. Like kind of sort of the way Zcash, I guess, is doing things these days, where the Zcash wallets are being shielded by default, but not forcibly. Whereas in the beginning, everything was transparent. Now, more and more wallets are defaulting to be shielded first. So that's kind of where I see that going. Sorry, I rambled too much.
No. I wanted to comment on the default. So things like Tornado Cash and Samurai Wallet, they were actually providing a service. So if the masternodes in Dash are being rewarded for providing instant send, does that make them kind of in the same realm of possibly be in trouble? And since the CT would be at the protocol level and nobody's receiving rewards, does that not make Dash safer?
Possibly, and this is one of those things where, obviously, like, Duke's on the awesome side of things, just focusing on the privacy tech, all the stuff that and I have to deal with like the meat space, which is annoying sometimes. But I don't think there's been any major problems with a lot of the integrated coin join type things. Decred has an integrated coin join as well. Dash has forever. I've been testing out a Coinbase card in the last few weeks, and I've been topping that up with mixed Dash funds with no issue. I think that we're past where that could be a concern or a problem. But that being said, you are right that having a non-interactive privacy function, just the way the addresses work, does make things a little bit better. And I don't, to sort of roll in, maybe anticipating a next question or whatever, where we're at right now. One of the reasons, I mean, CT is a great building block because um, it allows us to get a lot better privacy and it's streamlined what we have, all that good stuff. But it's also kind of, for the scaredy cats out there, it's kind of the safest thing out there right now because, first of all, PayPal is implementing PYU in their PYUSD stablecoin. They have a confidential transaction type where now, if I send you some money, but PayPal's stablecoin, you'd see that I sent money to you, you would see how much. And same thing with Circle for USDC. They have the confidential ERC20 token framework coming out. It's like the same thing. And more importantly, they're starting, because the regulators, whatever, are never going to be like, we love privacy. That's never going to happen. But we are getting to a spot where they're sort of differentiating the safe privacy, which they call confidentiality. And this is like, it's all this, for me, privacy is privacy. But for the corporations, the institutions, the regulators, confidentiality is like consumer grade privacy that will do things like protect you by hiding your balance and things like that. Whereas anonymity is what they're calling the dangerous, spooky one that criminals use or whatever. I mean, for me, it's all privacy. But so just the term, we have like a legal opinion letter from one of the top blockchain lawyers in Europe about that describes Dash's current privacy features, says that they are confidential transactions, even though it's not technically CT like we're implementing. The verbiage, the wording, confidential transactions is the most safe way of describing it these days. So basically, I would actually call CT. I've been using this term MVP or minimum viable privacy because even the most, regulated, the most, compliant, the most, all these things that, cyberpunks hate, right? Even though the bare minimum, they need better privacy than it's at the default level of a lot of blockchains these days. So I kind of view, obviously we do a lot of really cool things with CT with Dash, but also I kind of view it as like a minimum move forward because when you have mass adoption of this kind of thing as payments, no one is going to want, no one, no matter how much they trust the government, is going to want their balances and their transaction amounts exposed for the entire world. And so that's kind of like the very minimum, I guess, business wise, politically, whatever, I hope to achieve with this. But hopefully we get a lot of, improvements,
Right.
from this as well. Not just MVP, but start there.
So with all of the garbage that's in crypto these days, I mean, we went from like ICOs to NFTs. I don't even know AI, everything now. When does privacy get its trust? When does privacy? When
So-
will it finally become important?
I'll give my opinion, and then I'd love to hear Dick's perspective, because obviously I have my own world of things right here. I think this next cycle is going to be a boom one for privacy. Now we're seeing the top Solana influencer / developer guy is hardcore talking about privacy. He's a very big fan of Zcash. Zcash's technology is very public about that kind of stuff. Obviously, the Brave browser is doing huge things. Just about everyone is making talks about privacy. Right. Litecoin, we over here at the Litecoin Summit, their biggest achievement in the last few years has been MWeb, Memorable Extension Block. I think you're really like, and if you look at just like the price charts and stuff, Zcash is doing all right these days. Monero in particular is like, I think that's where most of the market is concentrating its capital about the privacy issue. But we're seeing, I think privacy is, we're starting to see just like the tip right here. But I think for the next cycle, it's like do or die for that. Privacy is going to be back on the menu in a big way, where now people understand crypto enough to where all the institutions, all the governments, everyone knows how to use a block explorer and some basic AI tools to come through and start tracing everything. And when people start to see that their favorite blockchain, if they transact only in Dogecoin or something like that, is just like a privacy nightmare worse than their bank account, because at least you have to like subpoena the bank account to
Right.
get your records. Once they start seeing that, I think it's going to be like a precondition for mass adoption. So I think privacy is going to be huge in the next cycle. Privacy super cycle next time around. That's my official prediction. Duke, do you have any opinion on that?
I generally try not to make predictions, but I would say I generally agree with you. I mean, I've been involved in as a developer in privacy coins for about 8 years now. So everyone has kind of been waiting for, when does the big day of privacy
Hmm.
coins come? Back then, 8 years ago, the privacy tech was just, it was really slow. It was very new.
Yeah.
There was very little like GUI user interface research, and it was just very, very bleeding edge tech in the sense that you're going to get some blood on you when you use it. So I would say we're now at a point where it's it's much better polished tech, and what's a good kind of history of now people realizing how do you show the GUI and the user interface to users that isn't confusing and scary and all this stuff. So I would say a lot of I agree with you. A lot of the preconditions are now there. And yeah, I agree also that basically a lot of blockchain analyst humans and blockchain sleuths, on Twitter or whatever, they're going to be out of a job soon. We're going to need way fewer of them because AI is very, very good at just correlating massive amounts of data. And it makes it very easy to see that there's absolutely no privacy on most blockchains. So but yeah, I've been in this space so long that I feel like it's hard for me to predict what the masses will do.
What is cool is
I like
I'm starting to see some of the privacy projects working together too. So that's pretty.
that would be nice. That would be nice because I'll be the first to admit that I've been part of some of the strife between different privacy coins, and it doesn't serve the whole ecosystem at all, and it doesn't serve the privacy sub section of the greater blockchain ecosystem. It doesn't serve anyone. It actually serves the people that don't want blockchains to exist or don't want them to have privacy. So yeah, it's I'm trying to do my best to just foster cooperation and different privacy coins getting along,
I'm
sharing.
doing the same. I'm doing the same thing with we built a website, the marketplace DragonX, which accepts pretty much all of the privacy coins, whether they be optional or default.
Yeah, that's great. It's it really serves it serves no one to have all the privacy coins fighting with each other, arguing and not just confusing users and all that. So I'm happy if anyone is using any privacy coin. I think that's a win.
Yeah. Amen to that.
So yeah, and that's kind of part of the reason why I thought it would be interesting to help Dash get confidential transactions, because Dash has a large user base. It's been around for a really long time. So if and when confidential transactions come to Dash, that's a lot of potential users that can actually, start using this privacy, increase their own privacy. So yeah, yeah,
I guess we can wrap this up. Go to dash.org, check that out. Go to hush.is and learn more about Hush. DragonX.is to learn more about the child of Hush and learn more about default privacy. How else can we get a hold of you?
Yeah, so my X handle and everything else is the desert links, desert hot lights, links to kitty cat personally. Also, obviously, run the official Dash handles at Dash Pay. You could join the Dash Discord, chat out there, the Dash Telegram channel, wherever. Just always keep up with what we're doing, and yeah, it's make privacy great again.
Yeah, definitely. And our Twitters are at hush.is privacy and at DragonX Channel. So go there, check it out. It was fun.